Welcome to Big Cypress. That was a going away song for Pat Kenny. That might have been my fourth going away song. I remember at the time it was like, wow, he'd been there for 9 years. And that just seemed like a real long time. I don't know why we didn't write up. For some reason, he just never made it. I think he was kind of specific about that. You know, a lot of people would round up. Pat didn't. Maybe it was important for him not to be there for 10 years. Anyhow, I remember, I still think of him as part of the staff, really. I remember him very vividly. We've been in touch periodically since. I remember going a couple things with Pat. He would come to my office just like bang on the window, and it was like February. He's like, "What are you doing here? We don't need you here. There's no water. You should be on furlough." He's like, "What do you need to know? Water flows downhill." He would say, "Water flows downhill," and I can't remember what the second thing was. But then I would always correct him. I'd say, "No, you're wrong. Water flows down gradient." For example, a tide in the Bay of Fundy is actually flowing uphill. But water always flows down gradient, even if it's a pump pumping it. And he took great chagrin to that and didn't take kindly to it. And it would be years would elapse, and eventually he would say down gradient. It was kind of a moral victory for me. Then I remember going, one time we had to go look at a restoration area that they had scraped down back to wetland grade, and I think Pat found that work really rewarding. He felt like he was returning the place back to nature. We were out there and it was the wet season. He just had like a new pair of boots on. He didn't want to get the boots left wet, but he was at the same time trying to say, yeah, you just walk in the water, but I'm not walking in the water now because I just got these boots and I want to ruin the boots. I have my swamp boots back in the office, but I didn't bring them. So he didn't get his boots wet on that day. And then when he had his party, I remember it was at his place. Pat was not gruff, but he kind of had an authority. He had a lot of gravitas, just the way he carried himself. He had a good sense of humor. He was always a wealth of information. And I felt like Pat's strength, in retrospect, was he really understood what everyone did. He valued them for being able to kind of tap into what they were doing. I think he kind of validated a lot of people, even though he was kind of gruff at the same time. You know, he was kind of one of those hard shell, but he had a real heart of gold, I think. He was always fun to interact with over the years. And, what else? I remember I was out in the field with him, and I can't remember, it was something in the distance. I was looking at a tree. It was him and another old school ranger that Pat in many ways was a replica of, or he was the only one that could replicate Kevin Kaser's style. But Pat was more polished around the edges, for sure. In the distance, there was a tree with some like white, I had my glasses on or something. I said, "Hey, isn't that a melaleuca tree?" And he said, "No, that's a cypress tree with egrets on it." And sure enough, we got closer, and it was a cypress tree with egrets on it. I was just still learning everything. What else about Pat? I remember it wasn't when I sang the song. It was in the early Bobby Angel years, and I didn't really think it was anything special, but he really wanted the lyrics. I don't even think we had typewriters back then. I said, "Oh, I'll write them down for you." So I kind of wrote a better version and gave him a copy. But he lost the lyrics, I think. It happens when you move around. When Pat worked at the Preserve, I just remembered I could never walk in the lunchroom without him being there. And I would walk by the lunchroom, he'd be there, and then I'd walk by 2 hours later, he'd still be in there, sitting on the couch talking to somebody. At first I was like, what does this guy do? But he was always talking about, not that he was drilling down into the cypress, but he was very knowledgeable, but he knew the place through the people. He always had his nose, it was a little bit of a gadfly quality to him that I think served him well. Eventually he went on and he went into the planning division in Denver. I think he and his wife aspired to go out in Denver. Maybe not unwittingly is the wrong word, but I think he quickly kind of assumed a leadership role in that group just because he was so good at assimilating information like he was in the lunchroom. There was nobody who spent more quality time in the lunchroom just kind of assimilating information than Pat, and I think it really served him well when he would work on plans. He just knew how to be specific, just like he didn't round up to 10 years. It was 9. He just knew the rules. He knew how to interact with people and be productive, that way. So it always surprised me. He went on and quickly became a superintendent. But looking back, it wasn't surprising because I think he possessed that right combination of being really smart, but also, I don't know if it's an emotional intelligence. I wouldn't say that. He's kind of gruff. But he understood people as well as he understood issues. And I think that really was what made him a good, and he was fun to talk to. I mean, even now, I can talk to him. I could pick up the phone and talk to him, and we could have a really interesting conversation for 15 minutes or whatever. And then he'd tell me that, get back to figuring out water flows downhill or something. And a final note, I do the best Pat imitation. I'm not a Rich Little or, some sort of mimic or something, but for some reason, I'm just really good. So even these days, sometimes I walk the halls and if I do my Pat Kenny imitation, everybody, and it's, mimicry is flattering, and the old guard still knows, oh, it's Pat. They just recognize it. I don't even have to tell them, and they recognize it. We all remember Pat fondly, as he remembers us fondly. And he knows if he's ever back in the neighborhood, he always swings by. There's still some of his files we have to clean out. We're waiting for him to return, and we'll do that. So there you have it. That's the inside scoop on Welcome to Big Cypress. Farewell song to Pat Kenny from 1999.